In America today, the battlefield is not just in politics or culture. It's in the unseen realm of influence and control. Just weeks before his death, Charlie Kirk confided that he was being pressured by powerful Zionist donors and political figures. And it was to, bend his voice, take their money, and submit to a re-education trip in Israel. He refused, and then he was silenced. This is not a random story. For decades, congressmen, pastors, journalists, and now influencers have been flown to Israel, courted by billionaires, told what to preach, what they can publish, what they can promote. The pressure's real, the money's real, and the consequences are deadly serious. As Orthodox Christians, we call this what it is, unseen warfare, a battle not against flesh and blood, but against powers and principalities, against deception, against manipulation, designed to capture the very hearts of the faithful. Tonight, we're going to be tracing this pipeline of influence all the way back, from Congress in the 1970s to the pulpits of American churches to the Instagram feeds of MAGA influencers. And we're going to show you how the same system that pressured Charlie Kirk is pressuring America itself.
This is a Tribulation Saints production.
Welcome to Unseen Warfare, where we expose the lies of this world through the eternal truth of Orthodox Christianity. This is not a game. This is not entertainment. This is war. Stay armed, stay sober, and remember,
Christ is King. Christ is King.
Glory to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit. One God, amen. So, first of all, welcome. Welcome to the very first episode of Unseen Warfare. I am your host, Marco. Thank you guys for actually joining and, obviously subbing and all that stuff. And by the way, if you're not subscribed, you're watching this video, make sure to, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell. I would really appreciate it. Obviously, we're a small channel. We're just, getting started. And so all your support is awesome. It's a blessing from God. But I want to start, in the opening, obviously, we talked about the fact that there are these donors and these organizations, Zionist organizations, that have been basically influencing, American politics, churches, the populace for a long period of time. And right now, with everything going on, obviously with the Charlie Kirk situation, you're watching a lot of anger. There's a lot of anger out there, left versus right, right versus left, whatever you want to call it. I want you to understand, just from an Orthodox perspective, a Christian perspective, that, we need to be careful. We need to be careful where we kind of place that anger. And I will tell you that these powers that actually are controlling all of this, they absolutely want you to go crazy. They would love to see a civil war in this country, because these are the people that actually believe in order out of chaos. And you need to understand that, number one. I need you, by the way, to pray for discernment. Understand that we're not just, this isn't just the physical, right? This is what unseen warfare is. These are forces that we're battling, again, principalities, right? These people are from the demonic realms, put it that way. And we're going to get into all that. And again, I want you to understand who the real enemy is, because right now, as conservatives, we're angry, and, people are out there, they're angry at, they're blaming everything on the left. And obviously the left is acting like total demons. But you got to understand that ideology from the left, that's a symptom. That's a symptom of a much larger disease. And a lot of times what they have us focusing on is they have us focusing on that symptom. But we need to be focusing on the actual cause of the disease. And that's what this video is going to do. And I'm actually going to do an entire series on how all of this happened, how they basically, well, let me tell you how this serpent operates. It operates in two ways. And number one, on the political scale, right? They've influenced politics, and that's kind of where this all started. And I'm going to kind of explain that here in a second. Number one, the political side. But what they did is they basically got the American populace in large to basically believe in this concept that no matter what, Judeo-Christianity says that, we're supposed to support Israel unconditionally. And the problem is from a biblical perspective, from a patristic perspective, that's actually far, far from the truth, because technically the church is Israel. The Orthodox Church, started by Christ and his apostles 2,000 years ago, that's Israel. Again, that's not what this video is about. I'm going to get into that. There's going to be a whole bunch of videos that I'm making on that concept. We're going to really take a deep dive into that. This is going to be kind of the overview, just so you guys understand, where this is going. So, number one, they influence, politically. Number two, what they've done is they've brainwashed the populace through the churches, through these, 47,000 different, Protestant denominations. And it started with dispensationalism, John Nelson Darby, going back to the 19th century. Again, we're going to get into that. But this is how they brainwash the masses into thinking that they have to support them. And they even took scripture, Genesis 12:3, to say that if you don't bless Israel, you're going to be cursed. They basically scared, Western Christians, so-called Christians, into believing in this absolute lie. And that's not what this is. But this is how they did it. They took those two paths, right? Politically, religiously, and so they basically brainwashed the masses. So then it makes it easy for these dark forces, these organizations, to actually operate and do what they do. And I'm going to go ahead and show that here. Obviously, Candace Owens has been really kind of breaking the news on this stuff. Tucker Carlson's talking about it. They're actually being demonized by a lot of these same forces that are, bought and paid for by these individuals. And it's pretty sad that this is kind of the state of America that we're in right now. But and I'm going to play a video here from Candace in a second where she talks about that. But yeah, so you have these donors, you have these massive organizations, these Zionist organizations that have been around for a long time. Like I said in the opening, this stuff goes way back. It actually started with, John F. Kennedy, right, and his assassination. Here we are in 2025 when they released a lot of this stuff. We're now finding out, Israel had a major, involvement in the JFK assassination. And so this isn't a conspiracy theory. You can go look this stuff up. They've released this stuff. And so why did they do that, though? Let's go back there real quick. Let me just kind of start from that perspective. In the 1960s, John F. Kennedy had a big problem. He realized that, there was these people were trying to influence, American politics, right? Politicians. And they started buying politicians. So what Kennedy did is he tried to institute the FARA Act, right? It was the Foreign Agent Registration Act. This is what he needed to implement. And his idea was that he wanted, these Zionists, these, basically Jews in America, he wanted them to register as foreign agents, right? Because a lot of them are dual citizens. By the way, that's a big problem. Especially when these people are influencing, politicians and buying them off. It's a major concern. And so obviously Kennedy was concerned with that. So he wanted them to register under the FARA Act. Now, another thing that was going on at the time is Israel was actually trying to acquire nuclear weapons. They have them now, but back then they didn't have them. And Kennedy was absolutely, when they came to the United States, basically they asked him, they said, hey, can we get them? Kennedy was like, no way, I'm not letting you have nukes. And then under the Foreign Agent Registration Act, I should say, FARA, he was actually wanting, again, with them being registered, he wanted to track where the money was going. He wanted to know which American politicians were actually being paid off by these foreign entities, because that's a massive problem. I mean, you start literally going into the realm of treason. Let's be honest here. I mean, if you have any concept of, the Constitution and how a constitutional republic is supposed to work and how we were supposed to operate here, it's treason. It is what it is. I'm going to call it what it is. But anyway, so it started with Kennedy. Kennedy became a problem. Kennedy gets taken out. And so you fast forward to the 1970s, and that's where these organizations really started to infiltrate America, churches, politicians, mayors, state representatives, things like that. And these powerful donors, these powerful Zionist donors started, donating money to people. And I'm going to show you the entire timeline. We're actually going to go through an entire presentation. But what I want to do is I want to show you this video from Candace real quick. Let's watch that real quick. Let me kind of set that up over here for you.
It's like Tucker said, to have so many donors. What I do know is the donors became very rotten. at the end. He relied on his donors. They were making threats. Some of them, up until the very last minute, were making threats against him. Financial threats, I'm referring to, obviously. Some people are lying and saying that I said this donor tried to kill him, or it's so ridiculous. Financial threats, that's a threat, okay? That is a threat.
All right. So she said it right there. These were people that were actually pressuring him. So what we know from that situation is apparently he had this meeting with, a powerful donor. We'll get to that here in a second. And that was kind of the shakedown. Charlie started basically kind of shifting his viewpoints. And he was, by the way, he was very pro-Israel for the longest time. But his viewpoint started to change. He started to see things that were wrong here. I think Charlie was waking up spiritually, and he was starting to see things. And, things started not to add up, and he started questioning them. And so, he ends up getting basically shaken down in this meeting. Apparently, allegedly, Netanyahu then basically bribes him with $150 million. Again, this is stuff that's being, it's alleged. It's they're saying this is what happened. I'm not saying I have the proof of it, but this is what's being said by, people that were close to him, people like Candace Owens. And so apparently he was bribed, and he refused the money. He said no. And that made him super, super uncomfortable. Then they, they offered him what are called solidarity trips. Okay, they offered him this trip to go to Israel, where they would basically try to re-educate him. And by the way, it's funny, they call them solidarity trips. They're re-education trips is what they are, and I'm going to get into that. We're going to go through this presentation, but this is kind of how things happen. And Charlie said no to the trip, and well, Charlie's not with us anymore. And I think that Charlie became a liability. Again, I'm not saying who did what. We don't know. But I'll tell you that the story that the government has given us on that situation, that's not it at all. But yeah, it's this is where we are as a country. We're completely occupied. We're completely controlled by a foreign entity. And I'm going to show you right now, because I want you to understand who the head of the snake is. I want you to understand who the real enemy is, because these are the same people, by the way, that created leftist Marxist ideology. They're the same people that want us fighting left and right. They created the false left-right paradigm. By the way, that's unseen warfare. These are demonic forces at work. These are people that they don't believe in Christ. They pinned him to a cross. These are the same people. Jesus called them the synagogue of Satan. Then they pin him to a cross. And so that's what we're dealing with. But I'm going to get into this presentation. I'm going to take you back. Again, we explained the Kennedy situation. So right after Kennedy's gone, 1970s, things really, really start to change in America with, this Zionist, Israeli influence. So let me find this presentation that I have real quick so I can kind of show you what's going on. Let me get this fired up for you real quick. Okay. So let me get this other thing up real quick. All right. Sorry about that, guys. All right. I'm like technologically inept. I'm learning how to do all this stuff on the fly. It's the first episode. You guys got to give me a break. Anyway, so Zionist influence pipelines, Congress, pastors, media, influencers. This is a timeline, 1978 to 2025. And this is, power and persuasion, right? This is what they've done to us. So let me take you. We're going to go ahead and click over to the next slide real quick. Okay, and actually, yeah, this is important. From an Orthodox perspective, I want to be clear. I'm critiquing institutions and networks, not people. I'm not targeting a specific people. Actually, just so you understand, from the Orthodox perspective, we need to pray for our enemies. We need to pray for our neighbors. We need to pray for these people that one day they can, see the truth of Christ, and that they repent for what they've done to the world and everybody else, and that they come to Christ. And many in the end times, they are going to come to Christ. And that's what we're praying for. And by the way, a lot of these people, they're not supporting this Zionist agenda. And it's funny because you never see these You don't see other Jews that are against Netanyahu in the media. They don't show you that stuff. They don't want you to see that. There's plenty of people in Israel that do not support any of this stuff going on, by the way. And so again, these are just, they're lying to you, and they're covering all of this up. But so yeah, our response is obviously prayer, it's vigilance, and it's lawful accountability. We need to be careful of that. We need to be careful about, where we place our anger. And this is unseen warfare even within ourselves, right? The demons would absolutely love nothing more than to get you angry and put you in a position of hate. And that's not what we need to do. You need to pray for discernment and always operate with the light of Christ. That's number one. But all right, so the origins, 1970s to the 1990s. In 1978, AIPAC, okay, and which is they have another wing. We're going to get in. I'm going to give you guys the definitions, who these organizations are here in a little bit. But AIPAC basically launches their freshman congressional trips. So this is where they started to basically influence. Again, these are these solidarity trips. They call them solidarity trips. So they take you to Israel. They take you to the Holocaust Museum. They show you all this stuff, and they make you feel sorry for, obviously it was a horrible thing to happen, but they really kind of hammer this into you in hopes of making you like the most ardent supporter of like Zionist causes. And so in 1978 is when that stuff actually started with AIPAC. And by the way, AIPAC, when Kennedy was alive, used to be called the American Zionist Council. They're now called AIPAC. And so in 1979, Jesse Helms' delegation. This was a pastoral delegation. There was another pastor, Falwell. He's given a private jet by Israel. They start doing these trips, right, to Israel, these solidarity trips and these re-education trips that they take. And so this is how they started to actually really infect, American churches, these Protestant churches. And around this same time, ironically, this is when you get, the concept of like rapture theology becomes big with like, Hal Lindsey and the, late great Planet Earth and, the whole Left Behind series and whatnot. And, these are obviously heretical teachings. They're not real. They're not something that the church has taught for the last 2,000 years. But again, that's for another video. We're going to get into all that stuff. 1982, the AJC launches Project Interchange for journalists, okay? So this is important. This is when they start to basically take journalists over there. They start re-educating them. They make them basically pro-Zionist. They come back here, and then our media starts basically pushing all of these pro-Zionist agendas. 1990s, the AJC plus other federations run mayoral delegations, because now it's not enough that they've been influencing like congressional candidates and things like that. They now got to get the mayors, city mayors, to start supporting this, because they got to basically, their whole concept is to take over everything. And that's pretty much what they're doing, because right now in today's environment, AIPAC, for example, they basically own all of Congress. I think there's only 10 members out of 535 members on Capitol Hill that are not on AIPAC's payroll. That's an absolute problem. That means 525 members, senators, congressmen, are absolutely owned by these pro-Israel, pro-Zionist interests, and they're, we have to question their loyalty. Who are they loyal to? Is it America or is it Israel? And it's pretty clear that it's Israel, because I'm going to get into something else, and I'm going to show you. There's another conference going on in live right now as I'm recording this, and it's in Israel. They basically took state representatives from every single state, about 250 of them, and they're at a conference doing this solidarity re-education program, and they're in Israel right now doing that. It's called 50 States, One Israel, because apparently it's not America first anymore. It's Israel first, and we're no longer the United States of America, but we're the United States of Israel. And so, again, big problem, right? Like, none of these politicians should be doing this. Anyway, we'll get into that. So go over here to the next slide real quick. All right. So then they have this evangelical pipeline from the 2000s to the 2010s. They really focused on like really hammering this in, right? 2006, CUFI, which is Christians United for Israel. I'm going to show you their page here in a second. They they take, all these pastors down to Israel. They start all these tours. And it's funny because the guy that starts funding this is Sheldon Adelson. Okay. He was a major funder. And by the way, the Adelson family is a major funder of, the Trump campaign. I want to say he was given well over $100 million by Adelson's wife, the widow of Sheldon. And so you still have to start kind of questioning, like, who are you guys loyal to? I mean, it's a lot of money, right? Over $100 million for his campaign. And obviously you see kind of like where his stances are right now. But anyway, the aim of these evangelical pipelines basically was to turn pastors into committed pro-Israel activists. And yeah, that's funny. I'm actually gonna let me pop this up for you real quick. I'm gonna show you this. All right. So let's read this real quick. So this is Christians United for Israel. Every year, CUFI brings hundreds of pastors to Israel on pastor leadership tours. These intensive learning tours are the most effective tool we have to turn a pastor who happens to be pro-Israel into a committed pro-Israel activist. The tours provide key CUFI pastors with firsthand knowledge of Israel's history, geography, and political situation. Let's stress that again. In addition to visiting the traditional biblical and historical sites, that's how they get them. This tour features special high-level meetings with government officials, military officials, and experts on Israel's politics and security. CUFI's pastor leadership tour creates a multiplier effect. These pastors come back home on fire for Israel and equipped to teach their congregations and communities to join them in standing with Israel. Okay. Let's break that down real quick. Let's go back a little bit to what that said. So these intensive learning tours are the most effective tool we have to turn a pastor who happens to be pro-Israel into a committed pro-Israel activist. That's weird. Why are they so hell-bent on turning pastors into pro-Israel activists? Well, they provide tours. They provide, CUFI pastors with firsthand knowledge of Israel's history, geography, the political situation. Now they got to get these pastors involved with Israel's politics, right? Our laws here apparently say churches aren't supposed to get involved in politics. But hey, it's okay though, because if you are a Protestant pastor, you can get involved with Israel's politics. In addition, they're visiting, biblical sites, historical sites. That's how they get them, because they get to, get that whole feeling that, they're in the Holy Land and all that stuff. And then, that gets the feelers, gets them feeling good, all warm and fuzzy and all that stuff. And then it's funny because these pastors then have these high-level meetings with government officials and military officials and experts on Israel's politics and security. Okay, let's stop there for a second. I need you to think. Why are Protestant pastors involved with Israel's politics and security? Why are they meeting with military officials? That's wild. This is when you start to go down the rabbit hole and you start to think that these re-education trips that they're doing, they're brainwashing apparatuses by Israeli intelligence operatives, okay? And now these pastors become an extension of this foreign intelligence apparatus. And then what they do is they're supposed to basically come here. They say it's called, it creates the multiplier effect. The multiplier effect. These pastors then come home on fire for Israel and equipped to teach their congregations and communities to join them in standing with Israel. So what they've just done in this operation is they've brainwashed these individuals who then come back here, and through their congregations in the communities, they're now going to start brainwashing those communities. You know what's funny? There was a time in history when this was like a thing. It was called the Frankfurt School. It was a neo-Marxist think tank run by these same individuals, Zionists, in Germany, 1920s Germany. And this is what they did. They actually started to do it by brainwashing children and all that stuff into supporting these Marxist ideologies. And this is literally the exact same playbook. I mean, it's wild to me. It's wild to me that this is happening and that we allow this to happen in America. And then these guys say that they belong to, you know, a church, and these supposed Christians then go around saying that, Genesis 12:3, we got to support these guys, because if we don't support Israel, you're going to be cursed. Total misinterpretation of all of the scripture. But hey, let's this is what these people believe in. It's nuts. And so now you see this brainwashing apparatus. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to get into a little bit more, and we're going to kind of go through the rest of this presentation real quick. So now we're going to get into the social media era of this massive PSYOP operation that these guys are running on the United States. So from like the 2010s to like right now, 2025, in the 2010s, evangelical media figures like Eric Stakelbeck. If you don't know who that is, that's the guy that like runs that show, or he's the host of the show The Watchmen on TBN. These guys start like pushing like super pro Israel information. Like they're really kind of pumping it out there to these dispensational brainwashed Protestant Christians that believe in this stuff. And again, brainwashed, not their fault. They're brainwashed into believing and thinking that this is biblical and all that stuff, but it's not. Anyway, so these guys start pushing this stuff on TBN. In the 2020s, this apparatus basically shifts to Instagram and TikTok and YouTube creators. Obviously in 2025, Israeli MFA funds MAGA influencers through an organization called Israel 365. I'm going to show you that in a second. But now you see all these MAGA influencers like David Harris Jr. and Ryan Fournier and these guys and DC Drano and these dudes, and they're like, oh, I stand with Israel. And it's like you see all these posts, and it's just like, this is what they did. They took them on these trips, brainwashed them over there, bring them back, and then these guys start pumping this information out. And I'm not saying those guys in particular, but you guys can look it up. If they ended up going on the trips, well, then you know what happened. But this becomes a problem, right? And let me show you real quick who this Israel 365 organization is, real quick. Let me share this real quick. So Israel 365 strengthens Israel by building bridges between Jews, Christians, and all who share our faith-based values. The funny thing is we don't actually share faith-based values with these people at all. The concept of Judeo-Christianity is it's an oxymoron. And again, it's not for this video right now. We're gonna actually take a deep dive into that theology, but let me just show you real quick. This one was kind of striking. So Israel 365 Action wins seats in the World Zionist Congress. So apparently there's a World Zionist Congress. So are you guys connecting the dots now? Let me show you these guys. So the World Zionist Congress, this was actually started by a guy named Theodor Herzl. And if you don't know who Theodor Herzl is, he's actually known as the father of modern Zionism. So this is the dude, like basically in the 19th century, that really started to he created this whole concept of political Zionism, which is basically a supremacist ideology. And anyway, again, we're going to get into that. I don't want to get into the weeds on Theodor Herzl right now, but remember that name because we're going to touch on that in future videos. But Theodor Herzl, father of modern Zionism, creates this organization. It's known as the World Zionist Congress. Okay, today that's what it's known as. So this other organization, Israel 365, right there, they are like winning seats around the world for this Congress that's like, involved in geopolitical world-class politics, where basically they kind of control the world. It's weird, right? But yeah, that's a problem. So that then this organization is actually heavily involved with these so-called MAGA influencers. So I want you to understand that just recently, Brandon Tatum was in Israel. He's doing exclusive interviews with Bibi Netanyahu, which is so weird. I just saw a video that he put out on, I believe it was on Tucker Carlson. Yeah, it was a hit piece on Tucker Carlson saying how Charlie Kirk wasn't against Israel, and he basically showed all these old videos when Charlie was like super pro-Israel, but none of the new videos where clearly Charlie was. I mean, it was just disingenuous. It's just horrible. But that's what these guys do. They're basically being paid, to put out this disinfo, this disinformation. So you need to be aware of this stuff because this is it's a problem. It's a massive problem. And so anyway, let me get into the rest of this presentation. Let's keep going down the list. All right. So now what we're going to do is we're going to get into like the key donors, right, over time. So we have a guy like, Sheldon Adelson, right? He kind of steps in like the 2000s, right? He starts funding things like CUFI and like other, GOP causes. And so Adelson is obviously, dual citizen, tiny hat person, Zionist that, excuse me, that ends up really funding a lot of U.S. politicians and races. And for example, Adelson actually, he ends up giving a lot of money to Trump the first go around, and then Adelson's not with us anymore, but his wife this go around actually gave over $100 million to Trump. So let me share this screen real quick. And so. We got Sheldon Adelson. We got this guy, Bernard Marcus, in the 2010s. He comes into the picture, right? And he's big on like media pro-Israel projects. He starts funding all that stuff. Foster Freeze, right? In the 2020s. He starts getting involved with like, starts funding a lot of this like evangelical outreach and all this stuff going into Israel. And then guys like, he's coming up in the news as of late, Bill Ackman, right? And, Bill Ackman, he's the one that's kind of in the hot seat right now, according to, Candace Owens brought him up. A lot of people are talking about him. Apparently, this is the guy that shook down Charlie Kirk at this like Hamptons meeting that he had. And apparently that's when he got like the magic phone call from Bibi that apparently bribed him with like a $150 million bribe that Charlie ended up turning down. And then, of course, they offered this re-education trip to Charlie, and he turned that down as well. And then, well, the rest is history. And we are where we are today with Charlie Kirk unalived, and it's a horrible thing. But Bill Ackman's the guy, and so he's a major player. And apparently, actually, you know what? I should probably bring that up just real quick. It's kind of weird that he's actually giving like $1 million apparently to the supposed shooter's dad. I mean, if that doesn't raise any eyebrows, I don't know what does. You guys do the math there. It's not a good look. It looks really, really bad considering. But yeah, these are kind of like the major players. And so you need to understand who these guys are, where the money's coming from, because these are the guys that are buying your politicians. These are the guys that are funding campaigns. And believe me, if you're not pro-Israel, you're not getting money from these guys. And they're gonna, and matter of fact, what they're gonna do is Bill Ackman. Ackman's actually the guy that I believe is funding. I'm not sure. I have to look that up, but I'm pretty sure that's the dude that's funding all the smear campaigns against Congressman Thomas Massey, right? So they're involved with AIPAC and these organizations, and we're gonna go down a list of organizations here right now. So let's do that next. So what we're going to talk about now is actually how this pipeline works. Okay, so going back in time, everything we talked about. So you had the congressional trips, right? You had, and actually, let me go back and just kind of show you this so that you guys can kind of put it into your heads over here. So congressional trips, what that does is that leads to legislative loyalty, right? Then you got pastor tours, that equals grassroots loyalty. So remember I told you at the very beginning, I told you that there was two ways that this snake operates, okay? The political route, that's one road, right? And then we have the populace, right? Like through what? The churches, right? So these pastor tours and all that stuff, remember, they're being turned into the biggest pro-Israel activists, right? So then they go and they brainwash their congregations, and that's how you get your grassroots loyalty, and that's how you brainwash the populace. So there's your there's your two roads that this snake actually operates through. And so then we have, the media, right? All the journalist trips that we talked about. So they get them basically pumping that to the rest of the populace, the ones that are not going to church. And so those guys are like, oh yeah, Israel has a right to exist and all this stuff. And by the way, that's a whole lie behind Zionism, right? It's not about whether or not they have a right to exist. And that's not what I'm arguing here at all. Okay. It's that's what they push, though. That's kind of the psyop that they make you believe. Has nothing to do with that. But it's the media's job with this is to start basically shaping the narrative, right? That's narrative shaping for the rest of the populace. And then obviously you have the last part of the pipeline, which is like modern day right now happening in real time, which is your influencer trips. And that's obviously that's how they get the whole cultural loyalty and the Gen Z, the millennials, all that stuff. That's the plan. That's why they're really pushing with this stuff heavily right now. Matter of fact, when Charlie started talking about this stuff, that's when they really made this push. There was this big announcement that Israel was going to take all these influencers and bring them to Israel, and they were going to re-educate them there, and so that they could be like super, super pro-Israel and start pushing that when they come back to the United States. And that's happening in real time right now. And so the next thing that we're going to go into is, and look, let me step back real quick. From an Orthodox perspective, a worldview, okay? Obviously this podcast, Unseen Warfare. This is all unseen warfare. So you're seeing this stuff happening, and I'm now bringing this to light. Hopefully, you guys, it helps open your minds a little bit as to where the evil lies, right? But number one, spiritually, right? This is harmful. It's actually shaping Christian minds to believe in this concept of political Zionism, and they tell them it has to do with their faith in Christ, and it's absolutely not the case. But that's what these people believe. That's what the majority of here in the West, right, with these heretical, Protestant ideologies, this is what they believe. They're basically brainwashed into political Zionism. And so then we have, the cultural aspect, right? The implications with that. It's conflating faith with foreign loyalty. That's just utterly insane, to be honest. It's just out of this world. But this is what they're doing. And so this is their web, right? This is how they're basically infesting and infecting every part of society. And then you have, the political side of it, right? Where, policies are now actually skewed by, this external influence. I mean, you have Marco Rubio right now pushing for a law to get passed. I believe it's in the House right now. It's in the legislative process, or not the legislative, I mean in the judicial process in the House, and they're looking into it. But apparently he wants this passed where if, here I am making this video, or if you're out there even questioning any of this stuff, right? This is anti-Semitic, supposedly, and which is just a ridiculous notion. We have a right as American citizens to question some foreign entity that is basically controlling and pulling the puppet strings of all of our politicians here. But apparently, if you do that now under what Marco Rubio wants to get passed under the State Department, you're going to lose your passport if you're critical of Israel. They actually want to pass this law in America right now. Do you see what's going on here? And this is how this evil has basically infiltrated the political system. And, it's been skewed by this external influence of Zionism and these entities that seek to control this nation. So let me kind of go into, there's things that we need to kind of be careful of, right? By shaping Christian minds into political Zionism, it's taking Christians away from Christ, and it's absolutely leading them down the wrong path, right? And this has spiritual consequences. There's a heaven, there's a hell, and we're hoping we make that cut, that we can glorify Christ in this lifetime, that we can live every day for him and become more like him. That's the concept of theosis under Holy Orthodoxy. But this has major implications. And so I'm hoping that this opens your mind and that, it gives you the knowledge that you need. And then you need to go into prayer and you need to start praying for that discernment and that the Holy Spirit actually gives you that. But from a patristic perspective, we've been warned throughout the ages, right? For the last 2,000 years, we have writings after writings and warnings about this exactly from the church fathers. And I'm actually going to go through those here in a second and show you. But they warn you that you need to guard your mind and your heart. The enemy works through persuasion, and that's what this is: deception, persuasion, all of that. And the unseen warfare, it's about discerning the truth from manipulation. And so you, as a Christian, need to understand that. It's super important. And my prayer for all of you out there is that that you win this battle in this unseen warfare. And that's kind of the point of this podcast or this show, I should say. And so, and really, our response as Christians, obviously, we need to remain in prayer. We need to be vigilant. You know, you have to do your research. I'm giving you information here in hopes that you can actually take a deeper dive. Start looking into this yourselves, right? Don't take my word for it. I'm giving you evidence here today. This is all, factual and it's all over there. It's out there if you want to see it, but you're going to have to do your own research. And you need to start pushing for transparency from your elected officials, especially. A lot of times, I think, especially as Orthodox, we tend to kind of be like this recluse that kind of goes into the back corner somewhere, and a lot of people don't like to talk or they don't like to do this. As a matter of fact, if you read a lot of the writings of the fathers, we're called to do this. We have to expose evil, and so you need to get involved in a lawful civic accountability with your elected officials. These are the conversations you need to be having for them. And I'm going to tell you right now, if you ask your elected official, hey, if you go to one of your legislative district meetings or something locally, right, and you ask them, hey, what's your stance on this? And they tell you, well, you know what? You need to be supporting the next guy that's going to run against that person, because I'm going to tell you, we got to get these people out of office. If they're loyal to this foreign entity and not America, they got to go. And so you need to be aware of this stuff. And then it's very important. Again, look, I know that, I come across maybe a little bit more harsh, and it's something that I always pray about, right? That God can kind of soften my heart a little bit. But I want to be clear about this. This is not blaming someone, from the ethnic perspective, right? We're not picking an ethnicity. It has nothing to do with an ethnicity. It has to do with a heretical belief system that's from the synagogue of Satan. Okay. And that's what's driving these individuals, these evil forces that are basically controlling our government, okay? That's the enemy. That's who it is. It's not the people of Israel. We pray for them. I pray for them all the time, that they come to the light of Christ, and that they finally come to him, that they repent, and they realize that that's their Messiah. And he already came a long time ago, 2,000 years ago. And he established the Orthodox Church, through his apostles. And I pray that these individuals, see this, and they come to the Orthodox Church, and they become, saved through its sacraments, through its holy tradition, and so that they can join us in the kingdom one day. That's the prayer. And so we're targeting institutions. We're not targeting people. And so that's very important. And so, really, in conclusion, what I want to do is we need to understand that this demonic influence over America, it's been going on for 50 years, right? It, from Congress to the pastors to the media to the influencers now, and by the way, this is not going to go away. It's only going to get worse. This is the unseen warfare, and it's political, it's cultural, it's spiritual. And you as Christians need to prepare yourselves. You need to understand what's going on, and you need to maintain a constant daily prayer rule where you're praying about all of this. And by the way, pray for these individuals. I mean, pray for them. Pray that they turn, right? That Christ is revealed to them. And so I pray for them. We got to pray for our enemies, guys. That's super important. But again, as Orthodox Christians, we have to resist the manipulation without any form of hatred too. You don't want to fall into some level of hatred. That's not what this is. We actually, when I when I present this information, I'm actually doing this out of a position of love. I want these people to change. I want them to come to Christ. I want them to stop serving Satan. That's the goal of this. And so what I'm going to do next is I'm actually going to show you guys who these organizations are just real quick. We're going to kind of fly through this real quick so that you understand and you're familiar with them. When you hear them in the news cycles and things like that, you need to know who they are. So I'm going to go ahead and share this screen real quick. So AIPAC is a major problem right now. American Israeli Public Affairs Committee. They basically control, like I said earlier, they control, 525 out of the 535 members on Capitol Hill. It's a massive problem. They're all funded by AIPAC. Okay, and so what they do is they obviously pressure Congress to vote in line with Israeli interests. They're the educational arm of the educational arm, I should say, is the AIEF, and it runs the Israel trips for new lawmakers, because as a new lawmaker, you got to make sure you take this re-education trip to Israel if you want to have a seat anywhere inside of, a federal or state government, basically. That's what these guys do. Next, we're gonna go to, again, I just explained that. AIEF, American Israeli Education Foundation. Again, education arm of AIPAC. I just told you what they do. We're going to move on. So we have the AJC. This is the American Jewish Committee. This is the global Jewish advocacy group founded over 100 years ago. It runs Project Interchange for journalists, mayors, and editors. It shapes civic leaders and media narratives. So again, this is just another organization out there working against the American public. And then obviously we talked about CUFI, Christians United for Israel, the largest Christian Zionist group, founded in 2006 by Pastor John Hagee. Remember that guy? You guys know who that is. It runs pastors' leadership tours to Israel, and it turns pastors into pro-Israel activists who then influence their congregations. And so, we have the IAF, the Israel Allies Foundation, Pro-Israel Lobbying Network. It links lawmakers with Knesset allies. This is the actual organization that links, your elected officials directly to Israeli government officials. Super weird. It brings U.S. state legislators and faith leaders to Israel. It extends reach into state politics and Christian networks. Nothing to see there, I guess. And then this one right here, Chabad-Lubavitch. So this is a Hasidic Jewish organization movement. It was led by Rabbi Mendel Schneerson, okay? Rebbe, I guess. He's a rabbi. They call him Rebbe. I think that's how you say it. Anyway, operates a global outreach centers, engages wealthy donors. By the way, the plane that mysteriously left like within an hour of Charlie Kirk shooting was linked to a guy that apparently donates a lot of money to this particular organization. And this is, they aim to bridge, to make a bridge between Jewish identity, politics, and, philanthropy. That's what they kind of hide behind. But I'm going to show you something super weird here. What I find, honestly, it's pretty bad. This organization literally requires U.S. presidents to venerate and pay homage to this Rebbe guy. Apparently his gravesite is in New York, and so every U.S. president from Jimmy Carter to Trump now basically are required to go and venerate this individual who is basically a saint in their movement. And so you can't be a president without venerating this guy and paying homage to him, which if any of these presidents are claiming to be Christians, basically you've just entered into the realm of apostasy. It's just absolutely ridiculous. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to show you a video here of Donald Trump actually doing this. So hold on one second. All right, so let me show you guys, this video clip just real quick of Donald Trump having to go and venerate this Rebbe guy from Chabad-Lubavitch, this organization, because again, can't be a president unless you do this. So you got to go venerate his tomb in New York. Let me show you this just real quick. I'm going to share my screen again. Let me play this for you.
Republican presidential nominee and former President Donald Trump made a personal prayer visit on Monday to the Ohel, the resting place of Rabbi Menachem M. Schneerson, the former leader of the Chabad movement. Trump was joined by the parents and brother of Eden Alexander, a hostage currently held by terrorists in Gaza, as well as Auschwitz survivor Jerry Wartsky and 2 Jewish college students who have faced anti-Semitism on campus. Upon entering the Rebbe's tent, Trump made a donation to the movement. Wearing a kippah, Trump prayed during the visit. His daughter Ivanka and son-in-law Jared Kushner have paid regular private visits to the Ohel before both of his presidential elections.
All right, let me. So yeah, and you know, his daughter and Jared Kushner, you know, they have to do this on a regular basis, right? You know, and you know, apparently it's weird, right? Like they don't have any influence over Trump, but they got to go there regularly. But Trump had to do this. This is kind of like the initiation ritual, basically, that every president, you know, is needing to do apparently. But yeah, as Christians, yeah, if you say you're a Christian, you don't do that. It's just weird. But yeah, this is how you make the cut apparently. So again, I'm gonna fly through this real quick. So next one on the list, let me show you this. We already talked about this. Israel 365. You know, nonprofit promoting Christian faith-based connection to Israel. These are the ones that are heavily involved with the MAGA influencers, right? 2025 America First Influencers trip. They ran that. A bunch of influencers went there, and it targets young conservative influencers with pro-Israel content. Next one is going to be, you know, Project Interchange, the AJC program, educational travel program of the American Jewish Committee. It hosts trips for journalists, media executives, and civic leaders. And this is the one that shapes reporting tone, editorial positions, and civic policies. You know, yeah, this is the one that controls the media. So this is an organization that's heavily brainwashing them. And obviously, we already talked about the key donors. And so what I'm going to do is we're going to kind of get into some patristic commentary on this. Since, you know, they have their commentary, we need to give you ours, right? What have the church fathers said about these forces that control, you know, these world leaders? And so this goes way back when, and I'm going to show you that right now. And that's kind of where we're going to end it. But before I get into that, that'll be at the very end. Now you guys see who the enemy is. I hope you do. I pray to God that you guys see this. You need to understand that this is the head of the snake. And so what they've done is they've basically divided the American populace. Division that absolutely is something that Satan does, okay? They got us playing this game of red team, blue team. You know, they got us angry at each other, ready to go to civil war against each other. You know, violence is from the devil, guys. Like, that's just, it is what it is. And don't get me wrong. I mean, there's definitely demons on that other side that, you know, even me at times, right, it gets me angry and then I have to go into prayer. But they've created all of this. And so don't get mad at the symptom. Get mad at the cause of this disease. And that's what this video, the whole purpose of this is to show you what the cause of that disease is. That way you're aware. And that way maybe, you know, share this video. Make sure you like it, subscribe, comment. Let me know what your thoughts are. Let me know that if you guys know anything about this. Let me know if I should be looking into anything else, anything that you want to see on the show. But definitely do your due diligence, I should say. And yeah, I hope that you see that this nation is occupied. It's occupied by foreign entities, evil entities. They control our government. They control Protestant churches. They control the narrative. They control everything that you're being shown in the media. And this is where we are in America today. This is part of that beast system. Make no mistake. This is absolutely the spirit of the Antichrist. And so as Christians, you need to be prepared. You need to be prepared. But let's take a look at some of these quotes from the church fathers and the saints. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with St. Paul the apostle and St. John the theologian. We're going to read Ephesians 6:12, which says, this is from St. Paul, "For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, and against spiritual wickedness in high places." St. John the theologian in 1 John 5:19 says, we know that we are of God, and that the whole world lieth in wickedness. And then we have patristic witnesses, right? The church fathers throughout the ages, right? St. Anthony the Great in 356 AD said that the whole world is filled with snares, and we ought to fear lest we become entangled in them and perish. St. Basil the Great in 379 AD said that the world is a great prison wherein the evil one holds men captive by passions as by chains. St. John Chrysostom in 407 AD, he said that the devil is the ruler of this world, not by nature or by power, but because the majority choose to be ruled by him. And that's what you see happening in America right now, right? People are they're choosing to be ruled by the devil. You see it everywhere. Those are the times that we live in. St. Macarius the Great in 391 AD said that the heart itself is but a small vessel. Yet there are also dragons and lions. There are also poisonous creatures and all of the treasures of wickedness. But there also is God, the angels, the life and the kingdom, and the light and the apostles, the heavenly cities and the treasures of grace. And that's super to under. Look, we know what we have to look forward to. That's what he's talking about here. So even though this stuff's going on, we know what we need to focus on. And that's our number one priority as Christians, to focus on Christ, to be like Christ. That's theosis. And then we have, St. Augustine in 430 AD. He said that the devil is called the prince of this world, not because he has rightful authority, but because the multitude of sinners willingly subject themselves to him. And so here in America today and all over the world, sinners are willingly subjecting themselves to the devil. And in this case, people willingly subjecting themselves to these evil interests that are controlling our government. Late fathers and saints, these would be a little bit, more modern times, right? Saint Simeon, the new theologian, not as modern, but that was in 1022 AD. He said that the world is ruled by invisible tyrants, demons, who make use of men as their instruments. It's exactly what's happening. St. Theophan the Recluse, right, in 1894 said that the world is not neutral ground. It's the battlefield under the sway of the evil one, and only those who arm themselves with Christ can resist. You can only resist if you arm yourself with Christ. That's why I'm telling you, pray, have a daily prayer rule, participate in the church, participate in her sacraments. It's super important. It's super important. And then in 1979, we have St. Justin Popovich. Popovich is actually one of the best. He's one of my favorites, by the way, because this guy was hardcore. He said that all humanistic and worldly rulers become servants of the devil when they deny Christ. For behind every empire that rejects the God-man stands the evil one who wishes to enslave man eternally. And that's what this is. That's what these entities are. They don't serve Christ. That's what St. Justin is saying here. They don't serve Christ. They serve Satan. And every single empire that rejects the God-man, which is the nation of Israel right now, I'm sorry to say that, they reject Christ. Who do they worship? Satan. That's what that says. And so, as a takeaway, the fathers consistently, they taught that while earthly rulers and systems appear to dominate this world, the true power is behind, obviously, it's behind them. It's the fallen spirits, the principalities, the powers, all that stuff, right? It's Satan, it's the demons, and they work to enslave mankind. That's what they're doing, and they're enslaving us here in America today through this system that I showed you in this video. And so I pray that you guys see the truth now that you do your research, and that you look into this stuff, and that you understand it, and that you teach your children correctly, because difficult times are coming. I mean, we live in them now. It's only going to get harder from here. And your hope lies in Christ. That's number one. So stay armed, stay sober, and remember, Christ is King.